Hi everybody, Manucha here. Today is Tu B'Shvat. I mean, obviously, when I publish this, it's going to be well past Tu B'Shvat, but I am recording this on Tu B'Shvat. And that means that it's 2 weeks to 2 months to the big P word. That is Pesach. Now, there are some of you who are going to say, you're not allowed to say that word until after the other P word, Purim. There are some of you that are going to say, you're not allowed to say that until 2 weeks before. Why does everybody start thinking about it way in advance? Pesach cleaning isn't spring cleaning. If that's you, then you might not want to watch this video because it is about getting ahead of Pesach. Now, if you're the type of person that doesn't really want to, have your kids keeping food ahead of certain areas of the house for like 2 months, you don't want to really be Pesach cleaning, in the weeks following Hanukkah, but you really want to get ahead of Pesach. You don't want it to be this last minute overwhelm where things are barely getting done and the things that are getting done, you kind of wish you would have gotten done better. So this is for you. Now, I did create an email challenge, like a series. I'm loosely basing this off of that, but I'm just really going to be offering some general tips off the top of my head. This is not scripted. I do encourage you to sign up for my challenge, especially if you're watching this between Hanukkah and Purim time. But even if it's after Purim and you plan to do your real cleaning in the 2 weeks before, the idea is really just some things you can do ahead of time and specific actionable challenges that you can do ahead of time that don't take over whole Sundays, but do take the bulk off of the pre-Pesach work. So just a little bit about me. I really have only been making Pesach for a few years, but I started making Pesach 2020, and I was in my first trimester then, and it was horrible. I'm talking about we were scrambling to have the house clean on B'dikat Chametz Day. It was crazy. And of course, we found out what we have to do, what we don't have to do. And yet it was crazy. It was my first time. We had to buy everything. I was making a ton of food that in the end, it was only my husband eating it because I was so nauseous. I couldn't eat anything. The next year I made Pesach again. And we were in the middle of moving. We moved a week after Pesach. I don't remember exactly. We were in the middle of renovations on our new house, which we had clearly outgrown just a few months before. And again, it was not. And I also remember we did most of our cleaning on B'dikat Chametz Day. And so while I've only been making Pesach for a few years, it was after that I sort of got this wake up call that I need to get myself organized. There's no way I can go into Pesach every year like that. It adds so much stress. I want it to be a holiday. And I always loved Pesach because everything felt so fresh and clean and new. And it wasn't for some people that's their worst holiday, but for me, I actually really, really like it. I don't know if it's my favorite holiday. I don't know that I have a favorite. There's definitely, reasons why I like some of the more creative holidays like Hanukkah and Purim. But I love Pesach, and I didn't want that, last minute rush to make me go into it really hating it. So I designed the planner, and I'm going to drop a link to it in the description of this video, but I don't want this to be all about the planner. I do have separate videos about that showing you through it. Again, I'll link everything here. What my goal really here is to just offer you those 5 things you can do in advance to take the bulk off of Pesach. So my biggest one is that the time between Hanukkah and Purim, or let's just say the weeks before your Pesach cleaning, is a time to debulk. I'm using this word a lot, but part of what makes Pesach cleaning so overwhelming is that you're not just doing a basic deep clean of your house. You're navigating a bunch of stuff. Now, let's give ourselves credit, okay? Our grandparents, not our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents, they were living in houses half a quarter of the size of the ones that we are. Even those of us who are living in relatively older, smaller houses, our grandparents were likely living in even smaller spaces. And definitely our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents. They had a family structure. They had help. They lived within an extended family framework for the most part. They were not working full-time also. And so I feel like we need to give ourselves a lot of credit. Most of us are down to a few evenings and a few Sundays, making Pesach. And it really is a lot to get done in that time. And that's why you kind of want to get to a place where, first of all, you know exactly what you need to do and what you don't need to do. Second of all, you can really just move through rooms quickly, get them cleaned, proper, and ready for Pesach at the last minute. So my first preface to this whole thing is going to be that I'm not a halachic authority. You definitely should consult with your halachic authority and not take anything I say at all in this video as law. Do not, if your rabbi told you one thing and I mentioned that I do something another way, obviously always follow your rabbi. But that's going to be my first tip. You could take pen and paper, write this down. My first tip is find out what you really do need to do and what you don't need to do. We were told that only toys that will be played with should be clean, and they don't need to be, unless you're putting them on the table, they don't need to be washed or anything. They just need to be searched through that there's no chametz inside them. So, for example, last year, we really were not going to clean the whole playroom. We told the kids to choose the toys that they play with the most. They have a lot of toys. We locked a bunch into one of the guest rooms and just locked that one away. And so we spent a few hours cleaning the playroom instead of 12 hours on a Sunday. Another thing we were told is that rooms and spaces that won't be seen on Pesach don't need to be clean. So if you don't usually move that ginormous sectional, and there's no reason why you might, and it's basically impossible to move, you don't need to stress about moving it. We have one like that in our family room. If you're not having any guests, just lock up the guest rooms, That's what we did last year. And last year, because I had a toddler who was a young toddler and would just march around the whole house with his food all day, I really was at a last minute cook for Pesach kind of stage. I was also going away for the first day, so I was able to clean really up until Erev. I didn't have to do a lot of cooking because all my cooking could be done on Chol HaMoed. So that's number one. Find out what you need to do and what you don't need to do. And you might literally whittle your list down to half. And my second thing is about spring cleaning. So what a lot of people will tell you is Pesach cleaning is not spring cleaning, and that's a great tip. And I think everybody knows that at this stage. You don't have to dust down every last shelf. You don't have to, it's not the time to purge. However, let's be realistic. If you're trying to clean that bookcase that's in your living room where your child walks around with sandwiches, and you know that you kind of need to because you might read books over Pesach, and there really could be half a sandwich hiding behind it. It's very hard to just pull the books off and put them right back when you know you're not using it. We've cleaned like that in the past. But a year like this, when I have a little bit more of a framework, and it is a very early year, so it's a tough one. Give yourself grace. It's an early year. Pesach is literally right at the start of April. For me, this is a year that I can think about it a little bit earlier. I was sick a lot, and I'm concerned that I will be sick again because last week when I was planning on recording this video, I was so sick. I got strep this time. It's always something else. So there's a lot going around this year. And so I definitely don't want to wait for the last minute. And so I'm really trying to, deprioritize work a little bit and prioritize getting ahead of Pesach. And so cleaning the areas that really need a deep cleaning early is very helpful, especially if it's an area that can avoid food. However, if you can't do that, just purge as much as you can. Take a big box. The next time you get a big box from an order, spend 10 minutes on an evening with your kids, if you have kids that are old enough to help, and just fill the box with things that you don't need, because the less stuff you have in the way of your cleaning, the quicker cleaning is going to be. And right before Pesach, it's very hard to also get those boxes out of the way, to find the time to drop them off. Your neighbors don't want to, if you normally would post it in neighborhood chats for giveaway, your neighbors don't want to take your stuff at that stage, even if they can really use it. I know I'm like that. If a neighbor posts something that I can really use, I'll take it, but not if it's right before Pesach. I just don't have the energy to think about going and getting it and making sure it's clean and all that. So really, now's the time to do that. And that style of purging, instead of fully organizing a space, just takes a lot quicker. And especially if it's a space that you're going to be cleaning a little bit further down the road. Another thing is not to worry about sort of whittling things to another place. My personal strategy is I have some toys in my living room, some toys in the family room, some toys in the basement. I want to move all the toys out of the living room because the only reason they were there was because I had a baby who would play on the floor. And now that baby is an older toddler. He's going to be 3 this summer, and he could play in the family room. So he doesn't really need the toys in the living room anymore. However, I can't organize all the toys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those bins of toys, 4 or 5 bins, put them in a donate, offer to siblings, garbage, and shove into the family room. And then I'll worry about the family room another time. So you can also things to another room if that's where they'll be living another time. As long as that's really where you're putting them and you're not just shoving it to another place where as long as you don't put the things that you're not going to, whatever. Another thing is also to choose micro-organizing projects. So what was it? 3 weeks ago, I decided that I have to organize my pantries. And you might say, okay, pantries, what are you doing pantries now? You're not even close to doing your kitchen. But I reduced my pantry content to half way in advance of Pesach, so that when I need to consolidate my pantries for Pesach, I have half the stuff to consolidate. I don't need to organize. There's much more space. There's much less garbage there. We personally do sell chametz, so we'll just shove everything to the pantry and close it off. That brings me to, sorry if this is like a little bit jumpy around, I do have ADHD. But that's another thing that sort of got taken off my to-do list. I used to spend a good solid few hours. I needed a whole day just to set up my kitchen because I was covering everything. Speaking to my rabbi actually had a handout that he gave out. I didn't even speak to him. That said that if you clean the pantry well, you don't need to also cover it. And that made such a big difference to me because it meant that I just had to spray it down with something that makes everything not edible. There's only maybe a few crumbs that you can't get out, but otherwise everything is really good. And to be honest with you, I usually put the food in bins anyway. So just knowing what you need to do also really does help. So another tip, and this one sort of builds on the whole not spring cleaning, purging ahead of time, getting things sort of in a good state to Pesach clean if you're not yet ready to start Pesach cleaning. And that is, we tend to think of Pesach cleaning, and this is the tip that's going to be especially helpful for the serial spring cleaners, the ones who really can't move through a room without also spring cleaning it. Especially those of us who have spaces that really do need to be organized. And that is, instead of moving through it room by room by room, you can clean in 2 stages. You can clean way in advance, not make the room kosher for Pesach, but just spring clean a room. This Sunday, we're going to deep clean the playroom. But we can't make it, let's say the playroom is on your main floor, you can't make it kosher for Pesach. But you can bring it to a state where it'll take you an hour to clean it on the Sunday before Pesach, and then you can follow up with the kid's bedroom that you spring cleaned last week. That'll take you an hour before Pesach. My point is that we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic with what our house needs, with what we're likely to end up doing, and with what our Pesach cleaning styles are. If we approach Pesach as, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that, and then suddenly it's a last minute panic, and suddenly the rooms take longer than you expected them to because there's a lot of clutter that has just built up because we're busy, active families. That's sort of what makes Pesach feel like this last-minute mad rush. However, if we approach Pesach, within a framework that's realistic as to what our needs are, as to what our family needs are, as to what our home's needs are, then I find that we really enter it much calmer. And another tip that I learned sort of in the last year or two is not to do the kitchen last, because if you can still set up, a Betty Crocker pizza maker and, or a toaster oven in your dining room, then you're better off just cleaning the dining room last and just, not really using the kitchen, but already getting ahead of your cooking and still letting the kids eat sandwiches as long as they stay at the dining room table. And I found that was a bit of a better approach than having to plan a whole extra week or 2 weeks, depending how much you need to cook, of Pesach cooking. And again, here's another sort of micro tip. If you do have an area in your house, and I also have a blog post about this that I will drop in the description of this video. If you have an area in your house, for a lot of people, it's like on top of the washer dryer, if you have like a shop sink, that you can set up a makeshift kitchen. If you do not have a Pesach kitchen, obviously, those of you who have a Pesach kitchen, great, get ahead, awesome. You can really start doing a lot of cooking with just large appliances. And I did this one year, and I do plan to do this again this year. You can make dips. You can make your roasts your low and slow roasts that take up the oven for a very long time when you're trying to just get things out there. You can set up a makeshift kitchen. So what I did was in my craft room, I koshered the faucet. It stays kosher for Pesach all year round. And you can do this in like a shop sink. You can kosher the faucet as long as it's a kosherable material. Again, speak to your rabbi about what you need to do to make it kosher for Pesach. You may need to replace the sink. You could get a cheap sink for like 50-something bucks if you know how to replace it yourself. Great. If you don't know, then whatever. It's not like installing a whole kitchen. So if you can swing it, it definitely can be very valuable to have that sink available, especially if it's one that's not used for food the rest of the year, so you're not so concerned about it becoming chametz. So I just put a sink insert because that's what our personal standards are, that we just have to clean the sink and put an insert in, and the faucet stays kosher year round. And then I set up food processor, Betty Crocker. Betty Crocker is good for roasting things on high, for doing kugels. You can't batch kugels very much, but you can do one kugel at a time. So those types of kugels I just make 1 or 2 of. You can get 12-inch round pans. They're not so practical. You can put a 8-inch or 9-inch square pan into the Betty Crocker. That stores better in the freezer. Way in advance, clear off a shelf of your freezer. You have it available. You don't have to do the whole freezer in advance for this. again, depending on your standards. Dips, so I've done roasted red pepper dip in the Betty Crocker. You definitely want to watch it. It gets very juicy, it gets all over the place. Again, if you get yourself a 12-inch pan, it'll catch a lot of the juices. A 12-inch round pan that fits into the Betty, maybe 11-inch, I'm not exactly sure. You can, or 10-inch even, I'm not sure. But the biggest you can get that really can fit in and it can close, it might have been 12-inch. I should really look into this, shouldn't I? I know I've done this in the past. And you can roast your red peppers and your garlic, and you can, and then you can just zhuzh it in the food processor that you already have out, or with a hand blender. I've done a tomato dip. I will link the recipe. I've done that in the crock pot. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'll have the recipe published by the time I have this done, but eventually I'll link the recipe. But I've done that in the crock pot. My roasts for sure. Soups. Soups are a biggie because you have limited pots. So if you can get 2 or 3 soups, and those also take a lot of work, then you have, I mean, we use 1 soup for 2 meals. So then I can get all my soups for the entire holiday done before I'm even ready to clean my family room or my bedroom, you know? And so definitely, you know, if you have somewhere, whether it's a laundry room or somewhere else where you can set up a bit of a makeshift kitchen, it could be really super helpful. And again, as soon as the stores have kosher for Pesach, you can do this. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I will put in a plug here for my Pesach planner, Pesach Planned. I have a whole video describing it, so if you still have a little bit of watching in you, now's the time to set up your planner. That is my final tip, my final tip. Get organized in advance, because you're like, oh, maybe we should Pesach clean the guest room today. True story. And you don't have the list, and you don't remember, you didn't go through it thoroughly. I'm going to link 2 things in the description. One is it's free. It's my mother's Pesach cheat sheet for cleaning the house. It's very detailed. My mother does a very detailed job, and she was very gracious to share it as a free download for Jewish moms and crafters readers. So you can check it out in the description of this video. The other thing is my Pesach planner. Now, I do have to reprint it. I have it upstairs. You know what? I'm going to go find it. All right, so I got Pesach plan. Now, I have to set up this year's version. I didn't make a major Pesach last year, so I didn't really set it up from scratch. I just used some of the pages. That's the advantage of a printable planner like this, is that you could just print out the pages you need from year to year. You don't have to reset it up. Once you set up the basic framework, as you can see, I have the covers and I have the divider pages. You don't need to redo it. So all we're going to need to reprint are these, you know, kind of pages. And we have, like, in just a really fun, I don't know if you could see the dot grid. You see the dot grid? So it's like you can make it pretty, you can have fun with it. Cleaning calendar. We have a cleaning calendar. We also have, like, this week's agenda, which you can see I don't use these pages. You just need to print the pages that you feel like you might use today's agenda. I printed all the pages because I wanted to, you know, show it in action, but I personally don't use all the different types of pages. You choose the pages you want to print. Cleaning checklist, my master cleaning checklist, and I'm going to copy this for next year. And I actually have an archive section as well where I could put previous year's things. Menu idea dump. So I have all my ideas, including the stuff that I didn't make. But regardless, you definitely want to start your list making now. Just when you're chilling with pens and papers, with your laptop, Google Docs, do it while relaxing. You can jot things down as you remember them. And make your list now, because then you can easily just check off one item. You know, you have 10 minutes. What can I do in 10 minutes? Okay, I can't really do a whole room, but I could do that drawer. You know, I really want to make sure I get my vanity cleaned out this year, because, like, it's a wreck. Totally spring cleaning, but how long does it take to clean out? I did that with my medicine cabinet one Sunday. I just had a few minutes. I was waiting for something, and I cleaned out my medicine cabinet, threw away it's amazing how much space I have in there now. It's tiny. But yeah, I find that really, you know, having the list so you know what you did, and then you can get these micro tasks done, even though that was totally not Pesach cleaning. You can really get those micro tasks done well in advance, and you're not stressing and having a panic attack in the weeks before Pesach. So I really hope this was helpful. If there's a tip that you find helpful, please drop it in the comments. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments. You can sign up for my, you know, stage challenge in the link in the description of this video. You can find Pesach Plan there as well. This is my 3rd year using it. You can use it year after year after year. You buy it once, reprint it yearly, only the pages you need. set it up how you like it. It's very customized. That's why I like it as a printable. I have considered doing it, Amazon Kindle print on demand, offering it for those of you who don't want to DIY. However, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I would have to charge a similar price, and then there will be so many extra pages that you don't use. Everybody uses different things. And so if that's something that you would want, definitely let me know, because if there's a lot of interest, I would definitely do that. But right now, I think a print your own version where you sort of spend half an hour, 10 hour setting it up, and then you have everything on paper and easy to access is really helpful. I believe you can use it digitally if you upload the PDF to a note-taking app. I believe you can. I think I tried it in GoodNotes, but I can't promise that. I have to try that again. But it definitely has helped me with Pesach. I know it's a resource that I created, but it has helped me. You have notes pages in case you're missing a page. It's bright, it's colorful, it's fun. That was the thing I wanted to make it fun and not boring. You could tell something's well used when there's coffee stains on it. That's my pantry purge menu. And again, not all the pages are filled in, but I have Sunday b'dikat chametz, breakfast chametz, lunch tuna patties, egg salads, crackers, and cut vegetables, dinner salmon and rice. So you can see that I had my menu planned out, so I wasn't scrambling what I was planning for kids. And that was you make a pantry purge menu to get offload things from your pantry that you need to use up for. That's for 3 weeks, 2 weeks before Pesach. Then you have the pre-Pesach menu for the meals, those challenging meals right before Pesach. You have, I think, everything covered in here. If there's something missing, again, it's the type of resource that I will update as I find out that there are things that may be missing, add a page or two here and there, and then send the updated copy to all purchasers. So I hope this was helpful. Drop your tips in the description of this video and follow for more fun and practical and doable Jewish content like this. I'm Menucha, and thanks for watching.